keep the red flag flying here.
Hello and welcome to Socialist Think Tank. Tonight we are meeting the team. It's just a chance for you guys to get to know the faces who do all the hard work behind the scenes and some of those who are always in front of the camera who you may already know. Also, there's going to be an opportunity if you'd like to ask us any questions, if there's anything you want to know about us, please do feel free to use the comments box. We'll get to as many questions as we possibly can and hopefully answer them satisfactorily. Also, before we start, I'd like to just say thank you so much to Straight Girl for letting us use their song at the beginning of this. It's fantastic, and we'll be putting the links to anything like that in our comments as well. So if you do want to follow that up, you can go and check them out. Thanks very much. Okay, so let's get started. So tonight, as I say, we're going to have a little chat with everybody who's part of our team. And I think it makes sense that we start with the person you all know, and that is Paul Daly. Hello, Paul.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, good. Right, Paul, the first question I want to ask you is, why did you start Socialist Think Tank and what were your aims when you did?
Okay, so I started Socialist Think Tank during lockdown. It was a long-term idea I'd had. What I'd thought is over the last few elections that we've had socialist ideas, and the media have completely hammered us on absolutely everything. People haven't been able to speak about socialism in its own terms. So it's always kind of saying, "Oh, what do you think? What about communist Russia? What about like all these kind of really quite what we think are quite ridiculous smears?" But they stuck, and socialists aren't getting the opportunity to speak about socialism without going through that lens of capitalism, really. So we decided to kind of make something where people got to just speak without interruption. And the interviews that we originally started to do, it's all been about like just listening to someone and listening to someone form the views. So it's not like kind of gotcha journalism. It's people being able to formulate their own views and get to the point that they're trying to make in a long-winded way if they want to, like I'm doing now. So so that's basically what it's about. It's to give socialists a kind of ordinary voice, a working class voice, and it get the kind of accent's important as well. We'll hear a lot about like these liberal elites in London, and that's what we're accused of a lot with regards to socialism. Whereas actually there's socialists in every single community. There's socialists that sound exactly like you do wherever you are in this country or in the world. And I think that's the important thing to get across as well. So we're unashamedly Northeast based, but we do speak to everyone like around the country about their own socialism as well. So it's about being able to relate to the people who are in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so would you say that the aims that you originally set out, have they changed at all over the course of the interviews you've been doing?
We've grown because the idea as well is socialism is about collaboration. So when someone comes to you with an idea and says, "Oh, you should do this," then what kind of socialist will go, "Actually, no, we'll do it my way because this is exactly what we've been trying to do all along." So like we're trying to bring people with us. So we're going to listen to people. If people want to be involved in Socialist Think Tank, they can be. They can ask us to do something. You know, it's meant to be a two-way process. It's meant to be something that represents people and listens as well, because there's not a lot of listening going on in politics in general. People are just telling other people what they think or what they should think or what other people think, and that's quite a ridiculous way to go on. So we will be listening to people's ideas and we will be developing as we go.
I can see that the rest of the team 100% agree with you there, that politics just isn't listening anymore. All the heads were bobbing there at the same time. So that's good. At least we're on the same page anyway. James, I want to come to you next, if that's okay. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background?
Yeah, okay. I'm a software engineer as a profession, so that's why my background is professionally. I have some experience in social media and marketing. but in artificial intelligence. But in 2017, I joined the Labour Party. Locally, there was Graham Morris, local MP then at the time, and well, it still is after the election. But just decided things weren't working properly the way they were meant to, and I was a bit outraged about what was going on in the country at the time. It was all the Brexit stuff as well. There was a lot of tension in the country. So that's basically where I came through on politics. I was just going to join the Labour Party that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started helping Graham Morris in his social media campaigns, getting involved in the CLP, volunteering, going leafleting, canvassing, like donut and phone canvassing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really where I come from. And then I've also got my yeah, sorry, and now I've also got my East Durham Make a Difference basically page that then span off into multiple groups into their own villages, just trying to get this constituency in particular a larger voice in comparison to what they have now, and get heads bobbed together to get some solutions going.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Make a Difference campaign that you're doing, that you're involved in?
Well, Make a Difference just obviously originate from the same principles. There was a lot of like very bitter arguing going on in local groups on like have you say pages and stuff, and there's a lot of conspiracy theories being spread around and stuff at the time, and it was just a lot of animosity and anger, but no real solutions coming from them. So that's really where it came from, is trying to reach out to organisations and local representatives, and also just people willing to make a difference themselves and get out into the communities and actually do something.
Fabulous. Okay, well, that's amazing. So I'm kind of sort of, we haven't really got a set order of service for tonight, so I'm going to mix it up just a little bit. Given that obviously you've said you've got a heavy background in social media there, James. How did you come to get involved with Socialist Think Tank, and what role do you play, as if I need to ask?
Right. So at first it was just I seen the post because I've New Year's locally, you know, and I seen you getting involved in Socialist Think Tank, and then you started doing political unmuted, so I started watching that, and then from there you were basically. You was working for somebody else at the time, and I just wanted to come in and try and help out as much as possible, and I offered that way to do a bit of video editing and stuff like that, maybe do some live streaming, what type of shows, some ideas. It was just approached that way, and then it basically evolved into more of like the social media strategy and IT, really, like website design and all that type of stuff.
Brilliant.
Background stuff, really.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work you do, and I'll come back to that. So Rochelle, you're our newest member. Can you give us a little bit of history about yourself? What have you been up to?
So I'm a secondary school teacher, and I used to teach DT. I trained in DT and art, and then made this move over to something called SMSC. So it's all the kids' sort of social, moral, cultural and spiritual aspects of the school life, and then started teaching the kids about like sex education, health, well-being, politics. And it was that kind of conversations where I thought, like, we need to start educating, like it needs to go back into the curriculum, like we need to start teaching the kids about all the different kinds of policies that are around, and we need to sort of, not just kids, but I think we need to try and like engage in more people and let them know that you don't have to be a politician to get involved in politics anymore. Like it shouldn't be that way. Everybody should have a say. Everything that's decided has got something to do with us. So this mindset of no, it's got nothing to do with me, I'll let them deal with it. That's the kind of thing that I want to try and get rid of. And that idea sort of started from school, and then I don't even know if James knows this actually, but when I'd started doing all the PPE stuff, which I'll talk about, it was James that actually got me back into like full-time like politics and like all the different things that James does. I thought, you know what, like there is a place that you can do all of these things, and I don't think I ever really put two and two together before. It's all
That's
James.
good news, to be honest. At least I've gotten somebody else interested in politics.
Brilliant.
Listen,
So our new hashtags, hashtag blame James, yeah? So Rochelle, what's your role in Socialist Think Tank and how are you finding it so far?
So I don't really know. It's making all the graphics, making all the hold pages, the Facebook things, helping James out with some social media on Instagram, just getting the word out really that anyone can be involved, anyone can say anything, anyone can have a voice. You know, it's just a common ground, and I think that the more people that get involved, the better, really.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Paul, I haven't given you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to actually starting this up. Would you like to tell us a little bit about how we all ended up here?
Me as a human.
As a human.
How I ended up coming.
How you made us all be here.
How I made us all be here. So, well, one thing that we did is get married, me and you, Laura. So that's one thing that was probably quite vital in our relationship. So what we're trying to do is just get this off the ground. We had a man named Matt Smith, who's really, really good sort of photographer and cameraman, and he's done some really, really good work. He was helping us out in the beginning, and then he got really, really busy. And then I thought, well, I'd met James at a rally for Jeremy Corbyn up in Newcastle, and we went for a couple of drinks together and stuff. Got on really well, and I thought, actually, you know, I haven't been speaking to James and stuff. I thought, why not get him on board with this? And we'd been ticking along quite nicely, I guess. But then I think Rochelle's kind of put rocket boosters under it this last week. I think once it's been the four of us, we seem to have really hit our stride. Now, I can't downplay how much you've done in this, Laura, because for people, I'll ask Laura what your role is. Actually, I'm going to fire the question back at you. You tell me what your role is here.
I like that James decided to call me a networking manager. I'm the person who pesters people to come on and talk to us. Basically, I just spend most of my time on my phone going, go on, come and talk to us, until they're worn down and say yes. That's my job, and organise a diary and make sure everything happens when it's supposed to. Tried a little bit of editing, just help where I'm needed, really. I think that's my role. Having Rochelle and James on board, though, is just such a breath of fresh air. I'm a lot busier now with it, I'll be honest, because I feel like I've got to keep up with them too, but I'm absolutely loving it, and it's sort of given us a bit more drive and a bit more enthusiasm for the socialism movement at the minute, because I feel like a lot of people sort of haven't got a home. And if we can provide a home for those people, or a place where they can listen to people like them talking, just to spread a little bit of hope and positivity, then that's exactly what we should be doing. So yeah, that's sort of my role. And hopefully, if it comes off, I'm gonna be hosting my own show in the coming weeks, and that's going to be basically around, we're looking for groups of people, communities, mutual aid groups, people who were involved in protests, or as I say, community organised and things like that, just to talk to us about what they're doing, why they started, and how people can get involved, so we can try and grow those communities as well, and help send their message. So that's pretty exciting. I've got about 6 interviews planned already. So like Rochelle said, we really want people to be involved. This is a movement about people. So if anybody has any of those things happening at the minute, please do get in touch with us. We drop our email in the comments. Just let us know, and we're nice people. We'll talk to you. We'll not try and trap you. And we can cut out anything you don't want said. So it's all good.
That is actually quite an important part of our ethos, isn't it? Because we do say to people when they're being interviewed, we're not out to catch you out. There's going to be no gotcha journalism with us. It's simply about getting the point across the way you want to do it. So we always say to people, if you want anything cutting out, I'd rather someone be honest and then say, actually, I'm a bit worried about what I said there, than them not feel like they can say whatever they want. We've never actually had anyone who's said anything that they've wanted to have cut out. But I just think giving people that little backup there, and knowing that, you know, we are on your side. It is about helping people, and I think your project that you've got coming up, Laura, is really exciting, because we can find out what's going on in the community. And I think the other thing that I didn't really mention about it is the idea is, I'm sick to death of top-down politics. I'm sick to death of thinking this is for the elites, and this is something that politics shouldn't be something that's done to you. It should be something that you were involved in and you're part of. And so many people are tired, and so many people are bored, and so many people worked so hard that all they want to do is relax and have a beer on a night, and they can't be bothered with politics. So we're going to try and do something for those people as well, and let them know exactly how things are working, why a capitalist system really isn't working for you. Because again, capitalism is something that I don't think anyone understands, because it's just the system we're in. But who would come up with the system of capitalism if they said, oh, well, tell you what, you get to make the rules, we'll do a capitalism. What we'll do is we'll make it so that if you've already got loads of wealth, that will mean that you automatically gain a lot more wealth. Work will become increasingly unimportant towards how much wealth you ever have. And you could work really, really hard your whole life. You can do all these jobs, and now people are called key workers, and all those jobs like collecting the bins, or working in the NHS, or teachers at the moment as well, and cleaners, people who work in a school as a cleaner, who the jobs simply couldn't go on. They're more important than ever. Those people's work doesn't matter, but having inherited wealth will mean that you accumulate more wealth through your life. No one would come up with a system where work doesn't pay. I don't know anyone who would come up with a system where work doesn't pay, apart from people who are incredibly wealthy. And that's a message that we need to get across to people, because I think more people are socialists than think they are. It's quite a normal mindset. Whereas I think that, it's portrayed as these reds under the bed, and this kind of crazy, oh, we're going to nationalise your nana, that kind of thing. That is not what we're about. We're about fairness. We're about work paying. We're about, supporting one another. We're about communities coming together and helping one another. And we're about not scapegoating people and saying, oh, look over there, he's going to steal your biscuit, when someone on a different plate, in a different part of the room has got a plate full of biscuits. It's that kind of fairness thing.
I think what I'd like to do, this is probably the first and only time we get the opportunity to have you on the other side of the microphone, Paul, as it were. Your question, your famous question that you ask everybody in all your interviews, is, what is socialism to you? And so I'd really like to take this opportunity to go around all of you and just ask the question. So I think I'll start with, because Paul, we've heard enough of you for a little bit. Let's go with James. What is socialism to you?
Socialism to me is just shared responsibility of most the. Let's start over again. It's shared responsibility of the majority of the bad things in society that occur. So if you're unfortunate enough to be able to be born with a disease, or some sort of genetic defect, or that you are born unwealthy, for example, that you should be provided with the same equal opportunity throughout society, no matter creed, inheritance, background, that type of thing. And just to add upon that, I still firmly believe that shared input of work should equal shared output in wealth that is created from your work. It's as simple as that. It's a fundamental principle that I don't think a lot of people disagree with, that your work, you should get paid for what you're worth when you go to work. Simple as that. And I don't really think anyone will disagree with that, and that's a fundamental principle about socialism. That's why I believe there's a lot of people out there that are socialists and they don't really know that.
Brilliant. You couldn't have said it better myself. Can you say it any better, Rochelle? What is socialism to you?
Socialism, it's sort of the same. It's the same theory, isn't it? Like I've got an example that I'll touch on. Same as sort of James. So if you imagine, last year we had all them kids getting their GCSE results, and you know they'd put all the plans in place, and then ultimately it boiled down to what postcode are you in? You know, does this algorithm that they put in place, and it was all about where you lived versus what you were ever going to amount to. And I think that's one of the things that really got me, and I think it got a lot of people, but I don't think that people would put that scenario and socialism together, because it's the opposite. It's the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, it shouldn't matter where you're from, or you know, this generational money that come down the line. It doesn't matter what you're born into. Everybody should be able to have access to all of these different things, and there shouldn't be a red tape. And I think that's one of the things that we try and do, like in school, or it's definitely one of the things that I think we'd be able to do in the Socialist think tank is give people that like uncensored platform to talk about socialism, what it means to them, how it's affected them, because I can guarantee there's been somebody being affected by decisions that had nothing to do with them. But it's, you know, I think everybody's a socialist, really. I think so.
Yeah, brilliant. Paul, finally you get your chance to answer your own question. What is socialism to you?
So it's a really hard question, and I really feel like I put people on the spot when I say it, because it's a very personal thing. But now I've heard so many people's views on it. The thing that always comes through that most people feel is community. People say socialism is community. It's about working together towards a common goal. It's leaving no one behind. It's about looking after people who need to be looked after, and it's about being part of something that's bigger than yourselves. Human beings are, funnily enough, they are not even, like Homo sapiens are not even the most intelligent human that ever existed, according to a lot of anthropologists. The reason the human beings are so successful is cooperation. It's the way they work together. And we've been taught this awful doctrine since the 80s, since trickle-down economics and individualism. We've been taught this kind of Thatcherite, there's no such thing as society, you're all individuals. Well, how in the world would anything work if we were all simply individuals? We're not individuals, we're groups of people, we're collectives, and we see socialism going on all the time. Like, you see socialism going on when a family cooperates and gives each other a lift to work, or things like that. The simple things like that. And getting to a grander scale, if you go on economics for a country, it's about making sure that the economy works for everyone, not just the select few. Not just the mates of someone who's in government. Oh yeah, we'll pass you this contract and stuff. It's about working together and doing what's best. And that's hard to do because you've got to listen to people. You've got to be democratic. Democracy is really, really hard. Dictatorships are much easier because someone just makes a decision, and no matter how bad it is, you've just got to go with it. Democracy is hard, but it's worth working towards. But it's a form of socialism as well, listening to people. So socialism is all sorts of different things to all sorts of different people. But at the end of the day, what really comes down to is community and looking after one another and making sure that no humans left behind, basically.
I think for starters, you've all hit the nail on the head there as far as I'm concerned. Absolutely spot on. And I think what's come out in not only what you said, but the interviews we've done has been that it's the problem with socialism is the word socialism, because people don't want to attach themselves to that. But if you ask them about community spirit and community organising and working together, and should you be nice to other humans, which is the basics of socialism, everybody agrees. So I think you're right. everybody's a socialist in one way or another. They just would never call themselves that, or don't really know what a socialist is. And so for a long time, I mean, you saw last week in America, when the Trump supporters stormed the Capitol, there was a huge banner outside with the word socialism and a red line through it. And it's just they've missed the point. They're using it as a tool to beat us with, and nobody's listening. Like you say, Paul, people need to pay attention and listen to what we're saying. It's not a political construct. I don't think socialism is of itself a humanitarian goal, really, not necessarily one that is based in politics. So yeah, I think you're all absolutely right. And I think platforms like this, where we can give people the space and the time to talk about their beliefs, is going to ultimately share a message that we need to get across. And so with that, what I'd like to ask you all now is, now that we're all involved and we're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, what is it that you would like to achieve now? What do you see coming next for Socialist Think Tank? And I think I'll go to Rochelle first, because we'll mix it up a bit. Rochelle, what would you like to do with Socialist Think Tank next?
I would like to try and get as many young people involved in, not politics, it doesn't necessarily have to have that banner, but get people involved in socialism, explain what it is, as you say, try and get rid of this like negative demonization that everyone's got this like weird agenda, when really it's nothing like that. It's just, as you say, people looking after each other. One of the things that we did in school, like during lockdown, when we had all this PPE that had gone missing and contracts had been given out and all that jazz, we'd got the kids that were in school to help making PPE. In school, we made over like 3,000 pieces of PPE, and we gave it out for free. Like it was all donations and all recycled, and we gave it all out. And the kids helped, and the teachers helped, and we had some friends that put them together and then like delivered them out and things like that. And I think having conversations with the kids when you were doing it, the kids were coming out with, it's important to look after each other. I can't believe someone hasn't thought of this already, and I can't believe we're having to do this, not begrudgingly, but more of a disbelief that they're not being looked after by the people in power, and that, depending on the choices that other people make, they were in that situation where like someone's auntie worked in a care home, but didn't have any PPE. So she went home with like 3 masks for her auntie, and just think like, hey God, it's real world stuff, and it's not this magical thing where people don't live it and they don't necessarily, it's got nothing to do with them. It's got everything to do with everybody, and I think that's the kind of thing that I want to help the message get across, even if it's to young people, old people, or whoever. Just share the message, basically, that it's not this wicked thing. Mm-hmm. It's the complete opposite.
Brilliant. James, what about you? Where do you see Socialist Think Tank going? Is there anything in particular you'd like to do with it?
Oh.
Here we go, the list.
I think everybody knows, between us four internally. But I definitely see this becoming something a lot bigger than what it currently is. I think the format that we're currently following is ideal. But to move forward and progress, we need to be inviting more individuals to come in to be able to take the workload off the executive, quote unquote, and then just to be able to help us out, push out more work, get it down to a regional level throughout the country, and not just here. Us as just a template, that we can spread the message throughout to everybody else. I see this going on live streaming platforms like Twitch and YouTube, and not just Facebook. I know Facebook is where our groundwork has been, but I see that moving ahead in different directions in the future. Hopefully that is, but we need more people to make that happen. It's as simple as that. We kind of do it just with us four, sorry. For now, and I got used to saying it for so long. But yeah, that I see that moving on to different platforms, not just the ones.
Yeah. Well, I think if anybody's capable of forcing us there, James, it's you. You're very forceful in your Twitch obsession. We'll get there.
I'm not forceful, it's assertive.
Assertive, sorry, of course,
but-
yes, absolutely.
But I always provide empirical data to back that up.
Yes, you do.
I'm very big on my numbers and charts, so if anybody else is like that, I kind of always have something like that to back up.
It's just us oldies, me and Paul, scared to dip our toe in the water of Twitch. We'll get there, I'm sure. So, Paul, coming to you, what is it that you would like to do with Socialist Think Tank, and where do you see us going next?
So, this sort of follows on from what James was saying. This has been something that we've managed to do, and people seem to like it. We aren't like huge or anything at the moment, but people seem to like what we're doing. They seem to like the idea that we want people to be involved. We want people who are... So we let's say the interviews that I've done so far, you are equally as likely to meet like a former chair of the Labour Party, or I don't know if we want to do an exclusive here, but in the future, in the very near future, a certain independent MP who's the former leader of the Labour Party hopefully is coming on. But you're just as likely to see someone like that, or a grassroots activist. That is the point of this. We're all the same. So there might be like a big name that everyone wants to hear from, but at the same time, there'll be someone else who's doing something equally impressive in their community. And if you look through our list of things, like some of my favourite interviews that I've done have been with people who maybe other people will not know the name, they won't have ever heard of them. And that's what I want to see happen, and I want to see more and more people getting involved, and more and more people having their voices heard. But as James was saying, we kind of want to go towards this going out into lots of different communities. So the idea of Socialist Think Tank would be something that grows towards the grassroots. So what we're going to do is we're going to, like, you know, even though we're central, we're really grassroots. And rather than rather than a roots kind of model, we've gone for a tree kind of model. So we want to be like kind of the tree trunk, and we want to expand out and have some branches and go out into every community in the UK. We've got a model that we think works. It could even go internationally with a small team, a small and dedicated team, where we can tell the stories of our local communities. And at one stage, I hope to see, rather than something that we're just telling you stuff, like these people from County Durham are telling you some things, rather than that, what I want to see is people from your community talking to you. So if you're in a community, can you have a local community story? Could you have your own socialist think tank? Could you be doing exactly what we're doing throughout the country? So that's what I'm looking forward to in the future. I would like everyone having these conversations in their communities and be just as likely to bump into someone in their local shop. The people who are watching it are just as likely to bump into that person, you know, when they're out for a walk with the dog or something like that. And I think that's what it's about, just getting really, really into communities eventually. So it's not these abstract people. It's people who they know, people who they respect, and people who they know are working hard in their communities. That's who we want to get involved. So we are after more people to get involved with this over time.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Sounds like it's going to be great. I can't wait. I mean, so that's all I really wanted to sort of try and get out of you guys and to try and get across to our audience. I've been trying to keep up a little bit with the comments on Facebook tonight. Had some absolutely lovely descriptions of what people think socialism is to them. We've been called young, so I'm loving that. So if you wouldn't mind, I'd like us to just have a little scroll through the comments and just see if there's any questions in there that we can answer. Anything you feel like you want to comment on.
There was one by Tim, if I'm not mistaken. 1 minute. He said, "Do the panel think proportional representation would give us more socialism / cooperation than the current first past the post.
You know, we talked about this on the Political Unmuted show last week. So go and check that out. It's on our YouTube page. Like, share, and subscribe.
You're so much better at that than me.
But it's a difficult one. I think for me, it really depends on how organised you are. If we got people organised in their communities and wanted to vote for the socialists within their communities to represent them, and then obviously have the socialists in Parliament, then for me, there was some strong opinions for and against proportional representation. In our current system, I don't think it would do us any favours. I think what we need to do is focus on getting the message out and focus on grassroots organising, and then hopefully we'll get to a point where it doesn't really matter which voting system we have in place, because this will just become the obvious choice. When people have been touched by socialism because people have helped them, then they've gone to help other people. I do feel like that's where we need to be focusing on. Within politics at the minute is not our home, in my mind. It's not where we should be organising, because it's just not working for us, and it's frustrating. It is, you know, unpaid hard labour at times. So I think things like Socialist Think Tank, and, you know, our sister stations like Socialist Telly or Labour Grassroots, and there's lots of these sort of channels that have started up just to talk to people and try and get these messages across. And we've got to work cooperatively to get those messages out. Like, for instance, tonight, we've basically decided to start Socialist Saturdays, because there's already a Socialist Sunday, but actually Socialist got us the whole weekend, so why not use both? And also our sister station, Socialist Telly, goes out on a Sunday night, and we didn't want to be sort of battling for numbers. We want to support each other. So we're going to go out on a Saturday now. Things like that, you know, little decisions like that grows communities and grows this message, is where I personally think we should be dedicating our time, rather than worry about the political system. So I went around the houses to answer that question and then didn't answer it, Tim. Sorry.
Do you want me to go?
Go on then.
I'll have a go at PR. I like the idea of PR in principle. However, I think there's far too many problems in our political system. Like, for one thing, it isn't going to get through when you've got a Tory majority. They've already gerrymandered the boundaries, so I don't think another party will ever have the opportunity to be in power, certainly not the way things are going at the moment, without something really, really different happening, without something like really grassroots occurring. What are politicians actually doing? They're making these decisions, but they're not really doing anything for us in the communities, you know, like, so there are some fantastic MPs out there who are trying the best, but what do? They go in and vote in Westminster. If they really wanted to see power devolved out and power outside of Westminster itself is a barrier to people getting involved in politics. You know, it's this like old-fashioned thing. It looks like a private school. It's designed to make people who are from working class backgrounds feel that they don't fit in. If there was any desire at all to change that, what they could have done is, considering they're going to have to do like £1 billion refurb, they could have built a new chamber somewhere else, you know, or we could get rid of the House of Lords. That isn't happening, and people feel totally detached from politics, regardless of whether it's proportional representation or whether we have a first past the post system. I would say there would be more socialist parties if we had proportional representation, because you know, people within the Labour Party who want it to be a sort of slightly more liberal wing of the Tory Party wouldn't want to be involved with the socialists in the Labour Party, you know, and at the moment we're seeing a lot of those people being really forcefully removed from the Labour Party. So I think you'd probably see more socialist parties. Whether you would see socialists in power and being able to make these big decisions, I don't know. Maybe it would be better to come from a position of compromise rather than starting from a position of compromise. So maybe you would say, well, I'll start off with this value, you think that value, and we come together. Whereas at the moment, centrist politics comes from the idea of we will start from a compromised position and then compromise, which is nonsense. But
can I come on in on the proportional representation? So in theory I would agree, but there is so many structural issues within our political system that need to be addressed before proportional representation will be able to make a difference, in my opinion. One of them is we still are essentially a constitutional monarchy with a second House of Lords that is unelected. And in my opinion, the House of Lords needs complete revamp, and also parts of our political system need to be addressed before proportional representation can actually have an effect on our politics, because all legislation that goes through the House of Commons needs to go through the House of Lords and vice versa. So whatever you're electing through to the House of Commons, for example, that's only half of the elected people, less than half actually. There's more House of Lords than there is House of Commons. But you need to persuade more people to get on board, is my point, that are actually unelected than elected. Although the House of Commons has the last say, etc. But in theory, the House of Lords needs to become elected. There's just way bigger problems than proportional representation, in my opinion, that we need to tackle first, but then for it to be made effective, that we can then cooperate on issues.
Rochelle, do you have anything to add on that one?
No, not really. I've just been nodding along, like yes.
Me too.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of questions. Rochelle, actually, I think you might be a good person to answer this one, given the conversation we had earlier about how you talk to your students. Leanne Powell has said, how do you gently introduce politics into an already established community group without alienating people? Sorry.
One of the things I did, and it was to mainly find out about whether people choose their politics or choose their side through like their family tree, or what they're mostly what they've mostly come across, what they've already had parts of their life introduced to. So there was one time I printed out lots of different policies, and I just put them into like student speak words so they could understand what a socialist was, or all that kind of thing. And then I'd said, like, here's some policies from different parties in the UK. Can you tell me, when you had to read them all, and then I said, could you tell me which one you most align with? And a lot of them surprisingly chose some parties that they hadn't even heard of, and it was magic, because it actually opened their eyes up to, oh right, okay, so they're not as bad as they say. Or there was a lot of comments around like, oh, I didn't even know that party existed, I didn't even know that they had those types of rules. And it was that, like, when you take the labels off things and you show people what the policies are, or you break the policies down, especially the younger kids, I think that's a good way of going at it, especially to someone that's already got a mindset that's established. Like, take the labels off and let them read them for what they are, and then decide.
Brilliant. Yeah. James, what do you think?
Can you repeat the question? I'm so sorry.
Of course. Well, I can try. I didn't do it so well the first time.
There's quite a lot of questions actually.
I know, we're gonna have to try and get through some more quickly, aren't we? How do you gently introduce politics to an already established community group without alienating people?
It's just more about the positive messages. We need to start finding middle ground in the positive messages about the policies that we're trying to, not we, but whomever it is trying to put across. I think that's the fundamental thing that we lack at the moment, is a little bit of middle ground. You've got to give something for us to be able to succeed in the policies that we want to achieve. And as we say, it's common ground, right? If we're trying to make a community, you've got to involve everybody. There's no exclusions in here, so all voices should be heard. So in my opinion, the only way to do that is just by giving out a positive message, and a very welcoming one, where you're saying, well, your voice is heard, it is taken into consideration. Come to whatever meetings, or come to the community gatherings that take place to be able to discuss the issues that are occurring in your area, and then get involved. There's no point to sitting screaming on the internet or sitting screaming like chatting away to your friend complaining, but you're not really getting involved in doing stuff. I know people don't have the time, and that's part of the capitalist system keeping us bound to this, to the way of life what we have right now. But if we don't give a little bit, we're just going to sit here and in perpetual motion, and I'm not one for that. I'd rather a bit of action.
Mm-hmm. Paul, do you have anything quickly to add before we move on?
Yeah, I would just say frame things positively, frame things in terms of fairness, because I think most people do agree that things should be fair, and that's what socialism is. And the other thing is as well is just don't condemn people, because people have been told all sorts of things, and one of the worst things that I see happening at the moment in politics is the complete condemnation of people for having a view, with the idea that, like, actually that is you set in stone for the rest of your life. That view that you have will go with you, and you can't change that. And it's really, like, I do things with anti-racist groups, and the best people at anti-racism are the ones who are trying to get the idea across to the other person that that person can change. You know, that view isn't set in stone. You will not always believe that. You might have been taught things wrong, and it takes a while to unlearn things if you've been told for years and years that immigration's this awful thing. So, like, you know, I do a thing when I'm teaching in school. I'll say, what do you think about the word immigrant? And most kids will frame it as being a negative word. I'll say positive, negative, neutral. And then by the end of the lesson, they're saying, well, it's a neutral word. It just means someone who moves from one place to another. You know, it's not a negative word, yet it is loaded with this negativity by our media and so on. So I think it's the idea that, you know, be kind to people, help people develop. If you simply cancel people and say, I will never listen to you again, that is you set in stone, ha ha ha, I'm better than you, then what in the world is the point in what we're trying to do? Are we trying to change people's minds and trying to help people understand the way we think and the way we think that would be better for everyone? Or are we just trying to tell other people that we're better than other people? I'm definitely in the first camp there, and I think everyone on this call is. But there are so many within politics who are just desperate to condemn other people to make themselves feel better, and that's not what it's for. That's not what we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Has anybody seen any questions that they've got a burning desire to answer tonight?
Maybe not burning desire, but maybe to put it across, because I know that it's related to professions of other colleagues here. Does the panel think education is important in brackets, or educating people on the grassroots socialism, regardless of the right-wing media propaganda? What does the panel think about political education in grassroots socialism? I think is the question, from what I'm gauging here, and that was from. Sorry, this is a little bit of go. I just put in WhatsApp.
Anthony Riley asked that question.
Oh, Anthony's getting involved as well. So, so
does the panel? It's in WhatsApp if you would like to read it. But does the panel think education is important, or educating people on grassroots socialism is important, regardless of the right-wing media propaganda?
I think it's absolutely essential, and that's why we're doing this. You know, that's why we've got Socialist Think Tank running. People, like Paul said, people probably, and Rochelle, people probably already have ideas on what they believe, and a lot of that, I think, comes from mainstream media. In fact, I'm pretty positive it does. There's other arguments, like, you know, you could come from a conservative family or what have you, but ultimately those negative messages and right-wing messages are reinforced by our media. So the only way we can change that is to set up things like this is to have conversations with people, is to run political education events. And you know what? It doesn't even need to be political education. It just needs to be, like, I think Rochelle's idea of taking the labels off things is absolutely perfect, because if you look at, for instance, for an example, the last 2017 manifesto, you took all the red off that, no labels whatsoever, and you put it in front of somebody and said, do you agree with this? The majority of that stuff in there was just perfect for vulnerable people, for less well-off people, for people who needed a little bit of help. It embodied socialism. But until we start teaching people actually what socialism is, rather than what they believe it to be, because the media has been perpetuating this horrendous myth that we're all evil and have horns and want to murder everybody, it's ridiculous. So yeah, education is the only way. It's not just important, it's probably the only way we're going to move forward in this. And there are a multitude of ways to do that. What we're doing on Socialist Think Tank's only one of them. Obviously, we have to grow our reach, and what we're hoping to do, if we can reach a handful of people and they tell their friends and they tell their friends or people they know, this is how things grow. And you'll find that grassroots organizing and things that have come from grassroots will always be much stronger and sturdier than anything that's sort of done because of money or capitalism, in my mind.
I'd like to say something. So if you imagine, like, when is the last time that you were ever able to have a conversation with somebody, with a young person about politics, and not come from it from like a "you will join this party" type of view? And like, I think that's all it is, really, like having conversations with people, saying, did you know that socialism means this? Like, I've just looked it up there, so I don't know if you know this, but the opposite of propaganda, this is the dictionary, what do you call it?
Definition.
The opposite of propaganda is honest, collaborative problem solving. Like, isn't that every socialist that you've ever known? Like, collaborative, talking to people, finding out what people's hardships are, helping them out, putting things in place to make sure that everybody's got food on the table, all that kind of thing. Health and well-being, asking people how they are in lockdown, all that kind of stuff. Everything that we've been doing, looking after each other, being kind, Laura talks about all the time. Like, I would definitely say that sort of stuff needs to be taught in schools, and it doesn't even have to come down as politics, like Laura says. Just the conversations need to be had, and there's not really curriculum time for it. I don't know what other schools are. I think it's a national thing. I think if it was to be made more a big deal of in schools, to have that time to have those conversations, I think everyone would feel differently.
I agree. I've noticed that we've massively ran out of time. We're already on 5:02. I can't believe it. I could do this all night. Some of the comments and stuff have been absolutely wonderful. I've got to mention Leanne Powell has been posting COVID updates and breaking down the daily briefings into easy and understandable bullet points. Not taking any sides, just saying this is what has happened. I think we could probably try and pinch those off you, Leanne. We could really do with that, because people have got fed up of reading them and watching them by now. So that's a really good idea. And subsequently, Leanne has just been asked if they want to be Prime Minister. Yes, please, more like you.
Can I suggest that maybe we as a group will go through and we'll answer everyone who's been in there, because it's been great to have such interaction. Mm-hmm. And there's something that I didn't mention earlier on that's going to be part of it. If you want to tell us what you think socialism is, I was mentioning Anthony Riley earlier on, because he's going to go up on the website, because he's written an article about what socialism is, which is really good, really interesting, and and we're going to post them. Whether or not we agree with them or not, it's posted for discussion, because the idea is socialism is different for every person. We're all going to have our own definitions, but the idea is to allow people to have that voice. So that's something I think is quite important to get across. If you wanted to tell us what it is and wanted to write in, then please feel free. We are open to things like that. And the other thing I need to mention is in about 3 minutes, Laura's birthday party is about to start. And
what?
So we're going to need to go. Like, so it was really funny when I was saying it's nice to see the youth getting involved in that. How many birthdays have you had before this one, Laura?
This is my 40th.
So you're going to be your 40th birthday. Yeah. So we're about to go on that.
I'm going to get more beer.
and see, we've all been having a beer as well. So in preparation, but Laura didn't know. So if I'm going to have to apologise as well. If I forgot to invite anyone, it's because I'm really bad at trying to do things sneakily behind my wife's back. I'm terrible at it. I'd be the worst person in the world. Yeah, I'd be the worst affair haver in the world. So I can't sneak around. So if you feel I've missed you, it's not because I don't like you or anything like that. It's because I have missed you by not trying to sneak around. So drop me a message or drop Laura a message, and we'll invite you to the Zoom party there. So
thank you.
Yeah, so...
Right, can we stop? We don't want to end this about me. I get accused of that enough. Right. What I need to say before we end the show is thank you to everybody who's watched, everyone who's got involved. We've really appreciated it. This is the team for now. We will expand, and when we do, we'll let you meet them too. What I'd like to say is please find us on YouTube, on Instagram. Obviously, you found us on Facebook tonight. Keep an eye on those things. If you want to be involved, I've dropped our email address in the chat. Please do contact us and let us know your thoughts. That's what this is all about. Thank you again to Straight Girl for letting us use their music. Absolutely unbelievable. We will be using more, I guarantee. And watch out for more shows coming up. We're going to be posting our schedules every month. So keep an eye out, and thank you again.
Yeah, and we're going to leave you with a little advert for our show that's on a Tuesday that we host. It's John D. Clare's show. He'll tell you a little bit about that as well. So that comes up every Tuesday live. We go on for about 2 hours, don't we? Because we do a normal show and an after show, and the questions are sourced from people like you. So we'll watch that now, and everyone have a lovely evening, and thanks for being involved.
Where can you find a team of informed, intelligent people who will talk politely, answering the very political questions that you want answering? Political Unmuted.
Find us live every Tuesday at 9 till 10 p.m. on Socialist Think Tank's Facebook.
Stay with us after the show at 10 p.m. when I read out all of your comments on the show.
And if you do miss the show, don't worry, you can catch us again on our YouTube page or wherever you find your podcasts.
So don't forget to like, share and subscribe to Socialist Think Tank.